Get into a little bit of an etymological exploration of the word information, and I put together a cluster map of different terminologies and ideas that the word information connects to. And if you go down this rabbit hole with me, you might learn a few things about the idea of information as it deals with the new dissemination of information and the old dissemination of information. Zion or Gemini, okay, is a tool, and it's also a weapon. So it makes sense that it was thought to be dangerous in its virtues by many philosophers, okay? My consciousness is pointed towards delivering this message. However, there are images and different things that are going through my mind that correspond to many more things than what is going on right here. Hey, how's it going, you guys? Isaiah Grant back with Thinking in Circles, and tonight we're going to get into a little bit of an etymological exploration of the word information. And I sat back on a day where I was just receiving my downloads and stuff, and I thought about the word information. If we just think about that word, just on a prima facie level, on the surface, right? Inner, right? Inside. Formation, something that is being put together out of possible many different things, right? We see a logoic function here, okay? I put together a cluster map of different terminologies and ideas that the word information connects to. And if you go down this rabbit hole with me, you might learn a few things about the idea of information as it deals with the new dissemination of information and the old dissemination of information, both of which are still with us. One has evolved, kind of into our time right before our eyes and is still evolving. One has always been with us, and most of us that are reaching back for our individuation and trying to reach a deeper spiritual basis within inside of ourselves are reaching back for the older type of information, and many of us are reaching points where we're gleaning and we're actually getting paid off of this. And what I mean by paid is not monetarily, but intellectually, and most of all spiritually. Okay, so information, okay, when we think about information, and I'm going to put this this mind map, spider map, this amplification map on the page. That way you can see where I'm at and follow along with me as we go, okay? Information, okay? It's contextualized and it's interpretive in the idea of the old dissemination, the older way that we used to get it, okay? Contemplative and interpretive, meaning you had to take some time to look deeper into what was being said in a lot of these things. This is where we got symbolism from. This is where we got our works of art from, that you have to contemplate and you interpret it, and it speaks to you in deeper ways, as opposed to the newer dissemination, which is decontextualized, and it's usually algorithmic. When you think about your YouTube feeds, when you think about the way that information is being put together, just off of computers from artificial intelligence or whatever, it's going based on an algorithm and making something based on a template of information, and we receive it. And we don't have to think much about it. It has in it many of the tones of what it is that we want to hear 9 times out of 10. When a lot of the older material is going to be such that we must really dig. And as we chew on the information, I mean, there's so many books, Jung's books, for instance, Carl Gustav Jung's books, for instance, Edward F. Edinger's books, for instance, you can go back and read them time and time again and get a new facet of the diamond in 3 dimensions, sometimes 4 dimensions. The newer stuff that's coming out is it's like a printer copy, you know, a printer copy from some bastardized original, you know. So information. Now, as far as the old dissemination, we're going to talk about the old dissemination first. Let's go old, okay? You have the dove or the pigeon. If you think about, pigeons were used at one time, okay? And a pigeon is in the family of the dove, okay? They use those to pass information over long stretches of land from hand to hand, person to person. You know, they were messenger birds, okay? We also see that this type of thing has happened in old scriptures as well, though, too, where a bird has been dispatched in order to send a message to some patriarch or some prophet, okay? Another portion of the old dissemination was horseback, okay? Now, the dove symbolically represents the logos, okay? And the logos is linked to the Holy Spirit. The Proto-Indo-European root leg links to the word logos, okay? And I'm going to put that up here because it's going to dovetail in with many of the concepts that we speak about here. And as far as deals with using mind mapping or cluster charting, as Edward F. Edinger once called it, and Jung called it as well, though, too, in order to amplify ideas, you're going to see all the little intersections, and it may and should cause your brain to fire in certain ways where you'll get greater ideas that can fill in certain blanks because your mind thinks the same way that we're putting this stuff down on paper right now here, okay? So the dove and the pigeon were used, right? The dove is representative of the Holy Spirit, okay? And also in the same vein of being the a representative of the Holy Spirit, okay, we also have the idea of Eros because of Venus, okay? It's a symbol of Venus, Astarte, Ashtaroth, just to name a few, okay? Now, the dove also represents the logos as the spirit or the word descending and making matter manifest. And we'll talk more about how ideas make matter manifest when we look into the etymology of the word information, okay? Logos is also word, but it's also a gatherer, okay? It brings things together. It brings many different things. When Jung talks about the logos bringing metal filings together, okay? This is what it does with things of many different categories. But in order to do that, it has to separate these things as well, though, to enter their proper order. Now, this is what links to on this map sorting and ordering, okay? There's sorting and ordering that's going on with dissemination of information, receiving of information. Your mind's doing it without even really sometimes trying. Sometimes you'll have a dream about this information. If you pay attention to your dreams, sometimes you'll see that your dreams have given you input on that which you have recently studied or something that you recently heard and weren't really hearing with the right ears. So there's always this sorting or ordering process going on, okay? The logos also links to the idea of consciousness and life, okay? Because we can look at the Ruach, and I speak about it much, that six-pointed star that Judaism took on later before it was a pagan star, and it was actually called the Star of Remphan, okay? However, this star has a place for all the 7 planets that represent our consciousness and represent our ordering functions. Yes, they can also be used as filing cabinets for the person that is rightfully ordering their mind to place all ideas inside of, okay? So they are also nodes we have on this map, okay? So we can also look here and see that in the idea of horseback, which was another form of dissemination, old dissemination of information, okay? that the horse represents the libido, okay? We also have the idea of the mother being in there. The horse also representing the mother in some mythological symbolic systems, okay? And both the dove and the pigeon, through the idea of the horseback representing libido and representing mother, but more so libido links to the conjunctio. So if I was to throw up the cluster chart of conjunctio on the screen, we would see some ideas that would have to do with the idea of information, okay, and the dissemination of information and everything that we just talked about here as far as the sorting and ordering ideologies behind this, okay? So with sorting and ordering, okay, is interpretation. And with interpretation and this sorting and ordering process, we have nodes where each of the information would fit, i.e. the Star of Remphan or the Ruach, the Sephiroths, Death through 4 through 9 in the Kabbalistic system, okay? They are all nodes which are receptacles, okay? And I put the word repository up above when we talk about the new dissemination of information, okay? But I would like for you to see that we lose something with newer dissemination, and what we lose is the depth that is hidden and held within symbolism and myth, okay? There's a definite flattening of depth, okay? Now, that links to the idea of the repositories that contain these forms of transmission of old information and new information. Remember when I was saying about art, about music, about symbol sets, for instance, being parts of the old method of disseminating information. We can see this in Egyptian hieroglyphs. They were pictures. We could see this in also the Paleo Hebrew. They were pictures, okay? And they were things to be meditated upon and looked at and to gain information on why they were chosen in the position, and also the enumeration that they were chosen to represent as well too, okay? So with information, okay, let's go from old dissemination to new dissemination, okay? The new dissemination model, okay, is our vehicles, okay? And vehicle, the Proto-Indo-European root of vehicle is WEGH, okay? It represents transport. It represents what ways of transport and travel, okay? And I'll put something up on the screen to show that. Vehicles deal with parcels and packages, boxes that are holding different things, okay? Loads, if you will, okay? And we can think of information if we just look beyond the physical form of a vehicle carrying parcels and packages. These parcels are packets of information that we have to unpack and unravel. And sometimes we can see how the information that we're being given, all the little parts, how they go together for the idea as how it's being given. And then we take it back to our emotions, which house our memory. And our memory shows us ways in which those things also link back to other things. So we're able to link all these things together, and that's a logoic attribute. So we're still drawing on the old idea, even though we're going into the newer idea, okay? So the new dissemination also rallies around the internet, okay? And internet's on cell phones, the cell phones, okay? And cell phones, because they have a data bank, because they have hard drive storage, okay? They have hard storage in there. Also computers, they're repositories of information, okay? And there has to be some method of traversing through the landscape of the inside of our phones, the inside of computers, the same way that we do so in our minds. Keep in mind, we're talking about the new dissemination, but it was built off the old, so it lets us know that what we're using inside to traverse through the old method, symbolism, art, for instance, we're seeing things in the mind's eye. We have a heads up display inside of here. It's old and we have it out here, so we don't want to use the old one. Most of us, we'd rather use the new one, but we have the same methods of interacting with the inner world, which is also linked to the outer world and allows us to cause changes sometimes, or maybe influence our being led to synchronistic events or changes. Okay. And within the idea of computers, right, here's where we experience the flattening of depth from the older dissemination's use of symbolism, myth, art, different things of that nature. Okay. And the newers, which uses icons, okay, also tags and emojis. Okay. These icons, these tags and emojis, we look at them, we interpret them, and we have an understanding of what it is that they mean when they're placed somewhere. They can make us feel a certain way when we see them during a texting session or something. They can let us know what another person is thinking without getting really too far in depth into what that person may want to say. Okay. They give us information instantaneously, just like symbolism does. But symbolism is much deeper. It's much older and it's much deeper. It verily, it can swallow up, truly, it can swallow up the ideas of the emojis, the icons, and different things like that. Because there's been times, for instance, okay, give me for instance, what do you mean by that? For instance, there have been times when I've looked at certain emojis and I was like, man, I wonder if these could be paired up with like tarot cards that represent the same thing. And tarot cards being picturesque images of planetary symbols, and those planetary symbols that link back to archetypal realities. Okay. They definitely can. They definitely can. A crying or sad face, we can look at as the Nine of Swords, Jupiter in Gemini, or we can actually look at Saturn, which is the world card, but Saturn is also Binah, which is a very sorrowful, they call it the Great Sea, the sorrowful, the sad mother. It's a mother that's sad, that's sad, looking over the world and all the sad things that are being done in the world. It's the darkening, if you will, also too, of the sun, Saturn. So, because what Saturn rules, Capricorn, and Capricorn, around the season of Capricorn, the sun is darkened because you get winter. So you can see within that line of reasoning how I would pair those things. It's a darkening of the countenance, sad emoji. Okay. So, these things would suffice. Okay. They were there before, they can overlap. Okay. So now, within the new dissemination, okay, we have information that needs to be contemplated upon within the old dissemination. Within the newer dissemination, as far as computers, as far as electronics and things like that are concerned, it's more instantaneous, but there also is yet a form of instantaneous insight, which I do link to here just to give a third, okay, which is called Mushin, okay, meaning no mind, okay. And in Hebrew it would be ayin akapat, okay, and that would mean no mind, okay. And the number for that Hebrew word would be 562. I'll throw up some equivalents to that number, okay. 562 also is equal, if you added it up, to Rashuna, okay, which means elementary stage, the beginning stage, the origin, the source, the beginnings, okay, beginnings, or primitive, older. So we're dealing with time, gradations of time, measurements of time, okay. And it was amazing that this popped up here and that this came into this whole consideration because of how I was studying this, okay? How this just came to me, and it's like information is really time intensive, but it spans throughout time. The way that information or that messages that we receive, sometimes they're time intensive, sometimes they come from a time far before our time now, and then also shows the grand importance of the ancient or the beginning over the contemporary, even though the contemporary has its place. Okay, so we look at the new dissemination, okay, as being, once again, decontextualized. There's a lot of depth that is taken out of it, okay, and algorithmic. The instantaneous version, okay, is contextualized and it's interpretive. You have to interpret those things, like in a state of motion, no mind, not allowing thought to pass in, not thinking about thought, not thinking about, trying not to allow thought to pass into your mind, okay? In entering that type of state and in coming into the visions and interacting with the visions that one would get, they would be symbolic. They would be dreamlike, most possibly. And then sometimes they would be clear and lucid. I've had clear and lucid visions that had to be decoded, and also ones that were spot on. Something happened 5 minutes of the same nature, because you have to keep in mind that we are always dreaming. Like even right now, my consciousness is pointed towards delivering this message. However, there are images and different things that are going through my mind that correspond to many more things than what is going on right here. And it doesn't even mean that my consciousness is deliberately split. I'm paying attention here. Okay, so I'll throw something up quickly here on Mushin, okay, but we're gonna get into the etymology of this word, okay? We're gonna get in directly to the etymology, okay? So the etymology of the word information, okay? Now, like I said earlier in the beginning of the lecture, we have the idea of inner, subjective. So what's going on inside, okay? Formation, okay? It comes from the Latin word forma, okay? Which is form. It means form, figure, shape, also beauty. Now, beauty in Hebrew is tiferet. Tiferet is the sixth sephirah, but the sixth sephirah in the Hebrew Kabbalah is also the center, so it is the whole of the Ruach. It's connected to all parts of the Ruach, which are sephiroths of Death through 4 through 9, okay? And that comprises the Star of Remphem, or the Star of David, okay, if you will. So we have beauty, appearance, outline, plan, model, pattern, and symbolism is a pattern, okay? So in formation, so patterns, forms, models, shapes, beauties inside, okay? Think about Plato's sacred forms, okay? Or the forms that Pythagoras used to use, the Pythagorean solids, or the Platonic solids, like I said earlier. They were original, beautiful forms that held very, very, very important cosmogonic at the end of the day. Like the numbers in those solids linked to potencies in cosmology and also too within the psyche, okay? So we can see that these inner formations are based upon archetypal patterns. Pattern is something of the Father, the Word. We have the word pater in there, okay? And from pattern comes matter, the mother, okay? From patter and matter come the son, okay, which is consciousness, Okay, so continuing, formation, or Latin forma, also means stamp, mold, sort, or kind, meaning kind, sort, you know. So we see the ideas of the logos here, chopping things up, separating them, sealing them into their places, okay? Which is what we're doing every day with things that we see around us on an unconscious level. If you have these symbolic systems in your mind and you understand what they mean and you're using them every day, you're doing this unconscious activity in a state of conscious awareness, okay? So this further comes from the ancient Greek morphe, okay, which means shape, form, appearance, outline, kind, or type, okay? And then we also have it coming from morpha, which means bodily form or build, okay? So although there is no direct root in Indo-European for the word form, Indo-European root DHEIGH, to form, build, knead, okay, knead like dough, okay, is first most appropriate. And Indo-European KWREP, which is body, form, appearance, is second most appropriate. I'll put both of those up on the screen, okay? The Latin forma is the oldest linking word to the word formation, okay? So the closest Hebrew word or root, okay, and we're going to kind of deep dive here on this before we finish, okay, is tekanith, okay, tekanith, which means map, layout, design, sketch, schedule, project, program, scheme, program, or plan. So anything that allows the information that's being given to be followed out from beginning to end, and to be able to see the parts of what these things are. This is information. This links to the idea of information, okay? Clearly and wholly. And the number is 880, okay? 800 is pay final, okay? In the Hebrew alphabet, and 80 is attached, the number 80 is attached to the Hebrew letter pay. So we have like an action, we could say, that leads to possibly a ruinous event. When we make a plan, we plan for things, and then a lot of times they don't happen exactly. So we refine the plan, and before we know it, we have a system. That's how all systems come into formation. So even the Hebrew idea gives the appropriate insight on the idea of information, okay, and also the refining of information into a system, okay. So now the root of tekanit is teken, okay, which is 470, okay. 400 is Saturn, the world card, okay, and 70 is the devil card, okay. Saturn rules Capricorn, which is the devil card, okay. And 470 could be saying, if you read it into a phrase, it could be said generation of a system, basically, or how systems generate things, okay. So teken, the root, means to regulate, measure, weigh, examine, also to program, formulate. Also to formulate a program is what it could mean. Plan, design, arrange, establish, estimate, sum up. Also, it means to write, like to make right, R-I-G-H-T, right? Be correct. Make equitable. You can't make an idea equitable unless you have chewed it up, spat it out, made right the certain situations in it where it's not going right, put it on make it scheduled, make it something that happens on occurrence, and continue to tighten up every little piece that's falling apart until it's a smooth ship, okay. So further, on the word Teken, okay, 470, okay, in a book called Sefer Sefirot, 470 equals period of time. So we're dealing with the idea of time, the cycles of time, okay? And that word is Ot, okay? Ayin Tav. Eternity, cycle of cycles, is Durim, okay? Cycle of cycles, going around, going around, going around, going around again, okay? And the angel of Jupiter in Gemini, which is 8 of swords, okay, which is Nethia, okay? And I put that in there. It's important because Jupiter represents cycles and also law and order, pairing with Gemini, and Gemini represents experiment, tools, and also weapons, okay? Because Zayin is a sword, and a Zayin is also a tool, okay? And I also write about the experiment part, okay? C Zayin equals 67. For example, 67 is the vision, being able to see the number 66, which is if you add 1 through the number 11, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8, blah, 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 all the way to 11, right? You'll get the number 66, okay? Which is a trial or an experiment. 66 is, okay? All that comes after physicality, I write. Number 55, which is the number of Malkut, okay? 1 through 10 added out, is experimentation and augmentation of natural laws. We're augmenting natural laws and making experiments with natural laws through systems in order to get certain results. And if they don't get handled the way that we want them to get handled, if they don't come out and appear the way that we wish them to, we make alterations of those things and tighten up law upon law, piece upon piece, gear upon gear, tool upon tool, okay? So that it works, okay? So 880, I write for Tekanit, the number for Tekanit, okay? 880, 8 plus 8 plus 0. If we add 880 severally, okay, by its units, we get the number 16. ATU 16, or the 16th card of the tarot, is the Tower. And we see there, I've always seen like the explosion that an alchemist may produce by mixing some of the wrong things as he's trying to find the Philosopher's Stone, as he's trying to get the right mixture. And this is what we always do with information. We're trying to get the right information so we can find the answer. And we follow out information sometimes that leads us to ruin. Then we got to dust that off and try it back again, okay? And that's what we will do in so many situations in order to approximate or lead or be led into a truth, and until we find something that seems like it is the truth, because it is playing itself out so smoothly at this point in time now, okay? So I wrote science. 880 shows science as a race towards ruin, and then stabilization of aberrations or aberration in and through scientific endeavor. And the scientific endeavor is to stabilize the invention, okay? And I wrote here in brackets, think of the mad scientist idea and his inventions and dangerous formulations, okay? I'll put a picture maybe up of a alchemist blowing up a lab, right? And if we think about certain areas that many of us might have lived in, there are modern day alchemists that are blowing up smaller, more discreet versions of labs that are doing alchemy nevertheless, if you think about it, okay? They're blowing themselves up, trying to come into a stone of great profit, okay? So I write here in closing, okay, that the symbol underlying this idea, okay, is Saturn, which is the world, which is ATU 21. Because think about how systems run, okay? They have all these gears one upon another, and these are, you know, these are systems in and of themselves. This is the system that does the pump. This is the system that makes this thing move. And this is the system here that keeps this cam rotating in the proper direction in order for this whole thing to stay together. And if one of those gears stop moving, the whole system goes down. Okay? Something to think about, because information is the same way. Once you're able to find one thing in there that doesn't work out right, and it doesn't support everything else, doesn't support the standing of the edifice, it crumbles. Okay? Then we're off to look for something else. So I write machines all the way down to their progenitors, the ones that birth them, which are ideas, operate on the simplest of machines and laws. And I'll throw something up here about the 6 simple machines, because you can see those in everything around you if you just have the eyes to see. The most rudimentary machines are sitting right in front of our faces and come to form complex machines in order to make a car engine run, for instance. You know what I mean? In order to make a watch continue to tick, for instance. Okay? So they operate, okay, machines all the way down to their progenitors, which are ideas, operate on the simplest of machines, and also laws, which when bundled together create complex machines and a certain type of order, which can be used as a tool. Yet most every tool can be used as a weapon. We were talking about Zayin earlier, okay? Which is the lover's card, which is it's a Hebrew letter that's written and it looks like a sword. Okay, so every tool can possibly be used as a weapon. Swords to plowshares and vice versa. And I'll throw something up about that statement, okay, so you can understand me here. Depending upon the type of mind that hones and harnesses them, okay, they can be used for many different things. And it depends upon the mind that harnesses these things and hones these things towards action, all of which is born of or part of an experiment. Anything that we do, that we put our mind to, that we set foot out to do, is an experiment, because we don't know what the outcome is going to be. That's why people that are followers of Islam will say, inshallah, we'll do such and such a thing tomorrow, or inshallah, this package is supposed to be coming to my front door. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't know what's going to happen, so we leave it in the hands of the higher self, in the hands of God, in the hands of the Most High, because we don't know what's going to happen next. Because everything from this point out, especially if I have to put my hand to it or my feet to moving forward to do it, is an experiment. And experiments are made to fail sometimes, and also to be tightened up into a better, more calculable, more formulated, and more formidable system in the end. Okay, now I'm going to read you some last things, you guys, that link to this. Okay, and I really wanted to go and read to you about the idea of techne, okay? Because techne, okay, has to do with this idea, big time, okay? And we hear the word technique, okay? Remember, technique is that word in Hebrew, okay? That is the most cognate and the most linking to our idea of information that we have been interacting with here. So I'm going to read. In ancient Greek philosophy, techne, Romanized techne, literally art, skill, or craft, is a philosophical concept that refers to making or doing. Now, keep in mind that techne was later turned into or created into the idea of a daemon of skill, art, and craft. So she is found, her energy, her essence is found equally in certain things, such as I will read a little bit later here. Today, while the ancient Greek definition of techne is similar to the modern definition and use of practical knowledge, techne can include various fields such as mathematics, geometry, medicine, shoemaking, rhetoric, philosophy, music, and astronomy. They all have the same thread of techne flowing through each of them as if they were like beads on this one rope that we can call techne that holds them together, okay? Now, one of the definitions of techne led by Aristotle, for example, is a state involving true reason concerned with production. Shouldn't information be such? Right? Yet we have to follow blueprints and we have to follow the instruction manual when we're putting a desk together. Otherwise, it comes out lopsided, right? So, I will read this part to you as well, though, too. The word technique comes from the Greek word for art, skill, craft, or technique. The modern-day English word technology comes from the prefix techne and the suffix ology. Both words are of Greek origin, combined to mean the practical application of knowledge. Techne in ancient Greece was thought of as dangerous in its virtues by many philosophers, including Plato. Now think about dangerous in its virtues. It's dangerous in its virtues because this tool can also be used as a weapon. Think about Zayin, which is Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, which is reason itself. Mercury is reason itself, science, right? And Zayin or Gemini, okay, is a tool and it's also a weapon. So it makes sense that it was thought to be dangerous in its virtues by many philosophers, okay? Arts such as painting and sculptures were particularly thought to be unvirtuous because of their third-handed representation of true reality and absolute beauty. Other philosophers such as Aristotle believed that techne was virtuous because it uses natural materials to create objects unknown in nature, and therefore it completes nature. So we have the idea of technology that's just implicit in the word itself, okay? Technology comes from this, and we've revisited this in our cluster map, in our mind map, okay? So I'm going to show you, I could read this whole thing, I'm not going to do it, but I'm just going to show you again, okay? Here, Socrates thought this about techne, okay? The ancient Greek philosopher Xenophon wrote down conversations he had with Socrates in the Socratic works Memorabilia and Oeconomicus. In both of these works, Socrates uses episteme and techne interchangeably. Crafts that Socrates classified as techne included harp playing, flute playing, dancing, wrestling, medicine, carpentry, ruling, generalship, house building, running a household, farming, and mathematics. Now, out of all of those, like wrestling shot my eyes up, but then I remember that Mercury was said to have invented, or Hermes was said to have invented wrestling. And why did my eyes go up? Because I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and if you think about it, we're using in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu geometric forms to form a strong base so that we don't get toppled over. We're using geometry in the figures that we make with our arms and our hands in order to choke people. We are using geometry to break certain holds that people are creating using geometric figures like triangles and figure 4 like squares and different things of this nature. You know what I mean? So it's really amazing how these ideas, for instance, with the idea of techne, with the idea of information, which this definitely links to, you know, even etymologically, okay, that these ideas are the basis and bedrock of the information that comes to us, okay? There's a whole life behind these informations that we get that underlie the information that we have to put together through our inborn and higher self-given, God-given, if you will, logoic talent to do so. And depending upon the level at which we're able to put this information together, it determines what we're actually able to do with what it is that we have in front of us, from what it is that we have gathered and accumulate and know, and what we can also take of what we know that's all the way over here in our mind somewhere, maybe from the past, and what we're seeing in front of us. Oh, I know if we mix this with this, this could be combined to make this. There are many people that I know that are farmers or whatever, or people that are outdoor dwellers that know how to make herbs and make certain mendicaments, you could say, like they're able to mix certain herbs together in order to make poultices, or to make things that you can take to help cure you of certain ailments that you have. And you wouldn't have known that these things would have come off this tree or off this plant over here unless that person had been taught this stuff by handed down knowledge. And then also too, maybe saw it on a YouTube video somewhere. You never know, but we need to be very, very circumspect, and also very wise about the knowledge that we're intaking, and then how we're utilizing this towards a good end for ourselves, and then are we placing ourselves around knowledge and information that is applicable to what it is that we want to build. Because if you think about the word information, okay, why are we forming anything or formatting anything? Why is anything getting an information? Why are things getting information, if you will, right? If we're not going to use this to build something, and is it going to be something that's long lasting? Is it going to be something that's built on a strong foundation? Is it something that's going to last the test of time? Is it something that's going to be worthwhile? These are just some questions to think about, though. But I'm going to cut this lecture down here, and just leave you with what I've stated there, and hopefully you enjoyed this short transmission of etymological idea I've been able to go through via breaking it down into a cluster map, cluster chart, spider map, they call them as well, though, too, a mind map. And I urge you to start doing the same type of thing, because it's going to cause you to think so much deeper. The way I did this is actually the way your mind thinks. It thinks in nodes, okay? So I basically did a cluster map in this video so that you could see how, in a small way, or in a large way, a medium way, we can say, how the mind will link pieces of information and come to certain conclusions and bring these things full circle. Okay, Isaiah Grant with Thinking in Circles. I'll catch you on the next one, because we will be doing some more of these little short outbreaks on etymological things that tend to blow my mind that I might want to share with you. Until next time, I'm out.